Welcome back to Your Daily Audiobook, where imagination meets the soul. Gulliver has crossed oceans and kingdoms, but now his greatest journey begins, a journey inward. In Part 2, he will walk through floating minds, wild instincts, and silent wisdom, discovering truths that no map can show. These are not just strange places, they are mirrors of the human heart. And as you continue listening with your daily audiobook, you may begin to recognize parts of yourself in Gulliver's journey. Chapter 1. The floating realm did not sleep. It drifted through the sky like a silent dream, glowing with pale light, always moving but never arriving anywhere. Beneath it, clouds rolled like soft oceans. Above it, the endless sky watched without blinking. Gulliver stood at the edge of the floating land, staring down. There was no ground, no horizon, only open air. For the first time in his life, even the sky felt uncertain. The people of this realm moved past him without truly seeing him. Their eyes were focused inward, as if the most important world existed behind their eyelids. They whispered to themselves, traced shapes in the air, and adjusted shining bands around their heads that pulsed with faint light. These bands were not decoration. They were machines. They hummed softly, sending invisible waves into the minds of those who wore them. Ideas flowed through the air like wind, shared and exchanged without words. Thoughts moved faster here than feet ever could. This was a city built on thought. Gulliver followed one of the sky people through winding halls that floated just above the glowing ground. The walls shimmered with shifting images, moving shapes, glowing symbols, endless designs that changed faster than he could understand. It was beautiful. It was overwhelming. The sky people led him into a wide open space where countless thinkers sat on floating platforms, their eyes closed, their minds far away. Light streamed from their headbands, connecting them in a web of glowing thought. Gulliver felt a strange pressure inside his skull, as if invisible hands were gently trying to open his mind. Images flashed before him, machines, cities, endless patterns, plans for worlds that did not yet exist. It was like standing inside a storm made of ideas. He staggered back, gasping. A sky person noticed and approached. They touched Gulliver's forehead gently, and the pressure eased. "You feel too much," they said in a calm, distant voice. "We think too much." Gulliver did not know how to answer. Here, no one laughed. No one cried. No one argued. They only thought. They had built a world where emotion was unnecessary. As Gulliver walked deeper into the floating city, he saw towers that drifted like clouds, bridges that curved through the air, and glowing orbs that stored knowledge. It was a paradise of intelligence. And yet, it felt empty. He saw no children playing, no lovers holding hands, no joy in the streets. Only minds working endlessly, chasing perfection. One sky person invited him to look through a glowing sphere. Inside, he saw visions of future cities, machines that could change the weather, structures that could move mountains. They were brilliant plans. But outside the sphere, the floating realm itself was slowly crumbling. Cracks of light ran through the ground. Small pieces drifted away into the clouds below. No one noticed. They were too busy thinking about tomorrow. Gulliver felt a chill run through him. A world can drown in ideas just as easily as it can drown in fear. As he stood beneath the glowing sky, watching the city drift and fracture, he realized that this place was not just floating in the air. It was floating away from reality. And if no one woke up soon, it would fall, taking everyone with it. Chapter 2. The sky people did not notice when parts of their world began to fall. Small pieces of glowing stone broke away from the floating city and drifted silently into the clouds below, like fading stars. The thinkers continued to sit on their platforms, their minds deep inside invisible worlds, unaware that the ground beneath them was slowly disappearing. Gulliver saw it all. He followed a narrow path that led to the edge of the floating realm. From there, he could see the land far below, a wide world of rivers, fields, and broken towns. Smoke curled from distant places. Life was happening down there. Real life. But the Sky People did not look down. They only looked inward. Gulliver met a Sky Person standing alone near the edge. Their glowing band flickered weakly. Their eyes were not lost in thought, but filled with quiet worry. "The ground is calling," the Sky Person said softly. "But no one listens." They told Gulliver that long ago, their people had lived on the earth. They had farms, homes, families. But they believed the ground was slow, messy, and full of pain. So they built a city that could rise above it all. At first, it felt like freedom. Then it became escape. Down below, Gulliver could see abandoned fields and broken machines, the remains of the Sky People's old life. Without care, the land had begun to rot. Without connection, the people had forgotten how to live. The Sky Person pointed toward a glowing tower at the center of the floating realm. "That is where all thoughts go. That is where decisions are made. But no one there has touched the ground in a very long time." Gulliver felt the truth in their words. A mind that never touches reality slowly forgets what reality is. As more pieces of the floating city cracked and fell away, Gulliver realized something terrible. If the Sky People did not return to the ground, they would lose everything. And the fall, when it came, would not be gentle. Chapter 3. At the heart of the floating city stood a towering structure of light. It was not built of stone or metal, but of shifting shapes that glowed and changed with every passing thought. This was the Hall of Endless Plans, the place where the Sky People gathered to design their future. Gulliver was led inside. The air hummed with energy. Endless lines of light flowed through the hall, carrying ideas from one mind to another. Sky People stood in long rows, staring into glowing screens and floating symbols. Their voices blended into a low, constant murmur of calculation. They were building everything. New cities. New machines. New ways to control the world below. But none of it was real. It was all only plans. Gulliver walked among them, watching as Sky People argued over small details while whole sections of their floating realm cracked behind them. They adjusted numbers and patterns, never looking up. One thinker excitedly showed Gulliver a vision of a perfect future, a world without hunger, without pain, without struggle. It was beautiful. But when Gulliver pointed to the falling stones outside the hall, the thinker looked confused. "That is a small problem," they said. "We are solving bigger ones." Gulliver felt something twist inside his chest. When people chase perfect ideas, they often forget real suffering. Outside the hall, more of the floating land broke away. Inside, no one noticed. The Hall of Endless Plans was full of brilliant minds. But it was empty of responsibility. And as the city slowly drifted toward disaster, Gulliver realized he was standing inside the most dangerous place of all. A room full of people who believe they already know everything. Chapter 4. Beyond the bright towers of the floating city lay a smaller drifting land. It was darker. Quieter. Its glow was faint and fading, like an ember long past its fire. Gulliver followed a narrow bridge of light that led toward it, guided by the worried Sky Person he had met before. "This is where forgotten ideas go," they said. "The island of silent failure. When Sky People created plans that did not work, when inventions collapsed, when dreams turned to dust, they were not fixed. They were sent here. Left behind." Gulliver walked through fields of broken machines. Tall metal shapes lay twisted in the mist. Cracked towers hummed weakly, still holding fragments of thoughts that no one remembered anymore. Ghosts of ambition filled the air. The sky person told him that long ago, their people used to learn from mistakes. But now, they feared failure more than they feared truth. So they hid it away, pretending it never existed. Every broken idea here still has something to teach us, the sky person whispered. But no one listens. Gulliver knelt beside a shattered device that glowed softly. Inside it, he saw visions of what it had been meant to become, a machine that could heal, that could help. It had not failed because it was bad. It had failed because it was forgotten. As he walked deeper into the island, Gulliver realized something heavy. A world that refuses to face failure is a world that will never grow. Behind him, the floating city shone brightly. Ahead of him, the island of lost dreams waited. And between the two, Gulliver stood, wondering which world would have the courage to change. Chapter 5. The floating city left the island of silent failure behind, drifting onward through the sky. Soon, a new land appeared below, a quiet island wrapped in soft mist. It did not glow like the sky world. It did not hum with machines. It simply rested, calm and still, as if time itself had slowed there. Gulliver was brought down to its shores. On this island lived the ones who never died. They walked slowly, their faces pale and lined with endless memory. Their eyes held centuries of watching the world pass by. They spoke softly, as if every word carried too much weight. At first, Gulliver felt wonder. To live forever. To see every sunrise. To never fear the end. But as he walked among them, that wonder faded. The immortals did not laugh. They did not dream. They did not hope. They had seen everything already. Love had faded. Curiosity had burned out. Even sadness had grown tired. They simply existed, moving through endless days with empty eyes. One immortal took Gulliver's hand. Their grip was cold. "We wish to never leave," they said. "Now we are trapped in staying." Gulliver felt a deep ache in his chest. Life, he realized, is precious because it moves. A story that never ends stops being a story at all. As the mist curled around the silent island, Gulliver understood that forever was not a gift. It was a slow, quiet prison. Chapter 6. Gulliver stayed among the immortals for a time. They welcomed him with gentle smiles, but their eyes were tired, as if they had already lived too many lives. They walked along quiet paths lined with pale trees that never lost their leaves. Even the wind here felt old. Nothing ever changed. The immortals told Gulliver stories, not with joy, but with distance. They spoke of great loves that had faded, of friendships that had disappeared as the world moved on without them. Everyone they had ever cared for had eventually become a memory. They were still here. Alone. One immortal showed Gulliver a hall filled with books. Each book held the life of someone who had lived and died. The immortals could remember them all, but memory was not the same as presence. "We are full of the past," one whispered, "and empty of the future." Gulliver felt the truth settle in his heart. To live forever is to watch everything you love leave. As he prepared to depart, the immortals did not beg him to stay. They simply watched, their eyes filled with something close to envy. Because Gulliver could still move forward. They could not. And as he stepped away from the silent island, he carried with him a heavy understanding: time is not an enemy. It is what gives life meaning. Chapter 7. Beyond the mist of the immortal island lay a land that felt raw and untamed. Gulliver was carried there by strange winds that smelled of earth and rain. When his feet touched the ground, he felt something different beneath him. Not glowing stone, not drifting light, but rough soil and wild grass. This land was alive. Sounds filled the air. Growls, cries, and distant howls echoed through thick forests. Shadows moved between twisted trees. And then Gulliver saw them. Humans. Or something that looked like humans. They ran on all fours, their hair tangled and their eyes burning with hunger. Their movements were quick and violent. They fought over scraps of food, screaming and biting like animals. These were the wild ones. They had no cities, no laws, no kindness, only survival. One of them lunged toward Gulliver, baring their teeth. He stepped back, his heart pounding. These were his own kind, stripped of everything that made them gentle. He felt shame. If this was what humans became without thought or care, then how thin was the line between reason and chaos? As the wild ones circled him, Gulliver realized he was standing in a mirror he did not want to look into. And somewhere beyond the forest, something wiser was watching. Chapter 8. Just beyond the land of the wild ones lay wide green fields and quiet hills. The air there was calm. The chaos of the forest faded into peaceful wind and birdsong. Gulliver followed the gentle path and soon saw them. Creatures that looked like horses, but were more. Their eyes were clear and intelligent. Their movements were calm and sure. They spoke with soft, thoughtful voices. These were the thinkers of the field. They welcomed Gulliver without fear. They offered him water and shade. Their world was simple but balanced. No one ruled. No one fought. Everything had its place. Gulliver watched in wonder as they worked together, caring for their land and each other without lies or greed. "These beings live by reason," one of them said. "They do not deceive. They do not pretend." Gulliver thought of the wild ones, humans who had lost their reason, and of these beasts who had found it. The truth was painful. Being human does not mean being wise. And being wise does not always mean being human. As Gulliver rested among the thinking beasts, he felt peace for the first time in a long while. But peace has a way of hiding difficult questions. And one of them was already forming inside him. Chapter 9. The thinking beasts led Gulliver to a wide, still lake. Its surface was smooth as glass, reflecting the sky and the rolling fields around it. No wind disturbed it. No ripple broke its calm. "Look," one of the beasts said. Gulliver stepped closer. At first, he saw only his own reflection, tired eyes, a face marked by travel and wonder. But slowly, the image began to change. He saw the wild ones, humans driven by hunger and fear. He saw the sky people, minds without hearts. He saw the immortals, lives without movement. He saw the tiny rulers of Luma, power without wisdom. All of them were pieces of humanity. All of them were pieces of him. The beast spoke softly. "Your kind is not broken because it is weak. It is broken because it forgets balance." Gulliver felt something shift inside him. He had crossed worlds searching for meaning. But meaning had been inside him all along. As the lake shimmered and the reflections faded, Gulliver realized that the journey was no longer about discovering strange lands. It was about discovering the truth he had been running from. And that truth was waiting for him beyond the fields. Chapter 10. Gulliver stayed with the thinking beasts for many quiet days. Their world was gentle and steady. There was no shouting, no hunger, no fear. Each creature knew their place and respected the place of others. Life moved in a calm, endless rhythm, like a peaceful song. For the first time in his long journey, Gulliver felt something close to home. One of the beasts walked beside him along a hill. "You could stay," they said. "Many would wish to. This land is free of lies. Gulliver looked out over the wide fields. The sky was clear. The air was warm. It was tempting. But then he thought of the human world, messy, loud, painful, yet full of laughter and love. He thought of stories, of mistakes, of people who grew and changed. This world was perfect. And that was its weakness. A place without struggle never grows. A place without flaws never learns. I cannot stay, Gulliver said softly. The beasts nodded. They understood. You will carry what you learned here, they said. That is enough. As Gulliver walked away, he felt both loss and strength inside him. He had seen what humanity could be. Now he had to return to what humanity was. And that would be the hardest journey of all. Chapter 11. Gulliver left the quiet fields with slow steps. The thinking beasts watched him go, their calm eyes filled with gentle respect. They did not try to stop him. They knew that every traveler must choose their own path, even when that path leads back into noise and uncertainty. As Gulliver walked, the land began to change. The green hills faded into rough ground. The air grew heavier. The sky lost its soft glow. It felt as though he were stepping out of a dream and into something harsher and more real. Memories followed him like shadows. He remembered the tiny people of Luma, trapped by their hunger for power. He remembered the giants, kind yet careless. He remembered the sky people, lost inside their thoughts. He remembered the immortals, trapped in endless time. Each world had taken a piece of him. And each had taught him something. He was no longer the man who had loved only the horizon. He now loved the quiet truth beneath it. When he reached the edge of the land, a ship waited, worn, simple, and human. Sailors called out to him. Their voices were imperfect, but alive. Gulliver stepped aboard. As the sails filled with wind, he felt something inside him break gently, like a shell opening. He was leaving behind the last of his innocence, and sailing toward a world that would never look the same again. Chapter 12. The sea welcomed Gulliver like an old friend. Waves rolled gently beneath the ship, carrying him toward the lands of humans. The sky was wide and open. The horizon stretched endlessly, just as it always had. And yet, something was different. When Gulliver looked at the water, he no longer saw adventure. When he looked at the sky, he no longer felt escape. He saw reflection. The sailors laughed, argued, and shared stories. Their voices were loud, their emotions raw. Gulliver watched them with a strange distance, as if he were already a ghost in his own world. When they reached land, crowds gathered. People stared at Gulliver as he told pieces of his journey. Some laughed. Some did not believe him. Some wanted entertainment. No one wanted truth. The cities felt smaller now. The streets felt louder. Everything moved too fast and too shallow. Gulliver walked among them, but he no longer belonged. He had seen what minds could become without hearts. He had seen what hearts could become without reason. And now he saw both inside his own kind. Returning home did not feel like coming back. It felt like being sent away. And as Gulliver stood beneath a familiar sky that no longer felt familiar, he realized that the greatest distance he had ever traveled was not across oceans. It was between who he had been and who he had become. Chapter 13. Gulliver no longer spoke much. He walked through the busy streets of the human world as if he were passing through a dream that was not his own. People rushed, argued, and laughed, their faces full of desire and worry. To them, this was life. To Gulliver, it felt like noise. He sat in quiet corners, watching. He saw how easily people became angry. How quickly they lied to protect their pride. How often they forgot kindness in their hunger for more. He did not hate them. He understood them. That understanding was what made him feel so alone. Sometimes he would look up at the sky, remembering floating cities and thinking beasts. Compared to those worlds, this one felt both beautiful and broken. He had learned too much to be simple again. And yet, he was still human. That was his burden. That was his gift. As Gulliver stood beneath the open sky, listening to the distant sound of waves, he felt something quietly waiting inside him, not sadness, but a new kind of awareness. One that would never leave him. Chapter 14. The world did not change when Gulliver returned. The streets were still loud. The sea was still wide. The sky still stretched endlessly above everything. But Gulliver had changed. He no longer searched the horizon for escape. He had learned that running across the world could not bring peace if the heart was still restless. The greatest journey was not outward anymore. It was inward. He walked along the shore where waves touched the sand, remembering the tiny people who wanted power, the giants who did not know their own strength, the thinkers who had lost their hearts, the immortals who had lost their time, and the wise beasts who lived in quiet balance. All of them were pieces of the same story. The human story. Gulliver understood now that being human meant being caught between extremes, between reason and instinct, fear and wonder, pride and humility. No one world had all the answers. But together they had shown him the truth. A life worth living is not perfect. It is aware. As the sun sank into the sea, Gulliver smiled gently. He was still a traveler. But now, he carried the greatest map of all, the one drawn inside his own soul. You have reached the end of Gulliver's journey, but not the end of what it awakened inside you. Across tiny kingdoms and giant lands, through floating minds and silent wisdom, Gulliver traveled not only across worlds, but across the many faces of the human soul. He learned that power can make us blind, that fear can make us cruel, that reason without heart becomes empty, and that even perfection can become a cage. And now, as his story gently closes, you are left with something far more powerful than a destination. A question. Who are you becoming? This has been your daily audiobook, where stories are more than words, they are mirrors. So when you're ready to travel again, to dream again, to discover something new inside yourself, we will be here, waiting for you beyond the horizon.